What's going on, guys? So here we got a little something to talk about because this keeps coming up, and we I definitely want to kind of keep you guys updated on the true story because I feel like some people know what's going on with this, and then others, they're not really sure what to believe, who to believe, that sort of thing, and it's a constant, it's a constant thing where we have to educate the consumer. At the end of the day, that's really a big part of our job here as real estate agents, right? Like, it's not your job to know everything that we're dealing with on a daily basis at the end of the day, right? Because from your perspective, you have your everyday jobs, right? You have your day-to-day things. You have the stuff that you specialize in, whatever it might be at your office, your daily job, your business that you run. And then, I was talking to one of my mentors yesterday, and she said something that really clicked in my mind, and it deals with this a little bit, and that's that every deal that we deal with is a learning experience, right? So this began way at the beginning of my career, and I've talked to people about it, forever. So what your home is really worth versus what you're seeing online. So if you've ever Googled your home and you thought, that seems a little high or way off, you're not nuts, right? So I want to explain why online home values are often wrong and what actually determines what a buyer is going to pay, right? Because the buyers are also looking at the same thing. So we have to educate not only the owner, but you as well. So do me a favor right now, if you can, type yes in the comments if you've ever checked your home value online, because a lot of people have. And they aren't bad. They're incomplete, right? They're not walking through your house. They don't feel the layout. They don't see, what buyers are comparing you to right now, right? Buyers don't buy averages. They don't buy, specific homes. They don't buy, average square feet and all that. That might be something that works in the city when you're talking about, price per square foot and all that. And you're looking at a very templated, layouts and units, right? But when it comes to, you know, finding out, your actual home value, there's stuff that online estimates really can't see, at the end of the day they can compare square footage and all the data that's out there, but they're not looking at the exact condition. They're not seeing, your layout versus open layout. They can't see natural light or there being no light at all. They can't tell, they're not taking into consideration if a renovation was done right or cheaply, right? Or not necessarily cheaply, but not to the best standards. Or sometimes, there's renovations that are done that are higher end. We need to consider these things when we're pricing a home, right? And at the end of the day, they can't see what the buyer's emotions are, because as much as, we might be talking about a home price, at the end of the day, the thing that really dictates home price is the consumer, right? They're the ones that are going to decide whether, your home is worth what it was put on the market for. And, they might have seen two homes that look identical on paper, but they could sell, for tens of thousands of dollars apart. So if you've ever seen that, comment house. you know, um, if you've done updates that the websites online don't know about, let me know. You know, so after we talk about all this, right? What actually determines the actual value, right? So real market value comes from three different things, right? So number one, it's what we were talking about, buyer demand right now. We're not talking about last year. We're not talking about, a couple months ago. We're not talking about that. We're talking about right now. So what is the buyer demand looking like for your type of home in your area, um, with the conditions you have? How can we highlight features that will lock into that demand, right? So we think about these things as we're pricing a home. We're analyzing different factors versus what just an online estimate is doing. We're just taking specific data and spitting out a number, right? So the other thing we take into consideration, the second thing, is current competition. So what are buyers, not only what are they buying, but what are they looking at? What are they choosing between? You know, because sometimes they're going to look at your property and then they're going to look at your neighbors, and then if that's not in the price range, they might, you know, if you remember when you were searching for a home, you were also looking for value, right? So sometimes what ends up happening is they'll be okay looking at another neighborhood or expanding their search area to match their budget as well, you know? So they're looking at your competition, you know? That's really what it comes down to. Other listings that are on the market at the same time as yours, if they're comparable or they're a little different but still kind of in the same realm, those are things you're competing with, right? And then number three, it's all about perception. So how your home even feels compared to other homes, right? That's why we talk about how first impression is so important. When you're talking about even, you know, curb appeal or, you know, the entrance or the landscaping or, you know, just little things like, you know, cracks, paint, um, you know, you want to make sure that your home looks and feels well maintained. You know, you might even have, you know, sometimes we have some homes that they'll have like essential oils, or they have you know, some of those little scent candles and that sort of thing. Very light, but still there. You know, so they're when a buyer comes in and they're looking at different homes, which happens all the time, they're gonna see how your home, you know, feels compared to other options, right? So your home is worth what the best buyer today is willing to pay, not what an algorithm is saying, right? Because that's really what those prices that you see online are all about. It's all about algorithm and that sort of thing, right? There's no feel there. Um, so, you know, if you guys are thinking about selling this year or next year, you know, drop a little thumbs up emoji. Let me know if you're thinking about it, because we want to talk more about your specific situation. Because what I'm talking about here, it does apply overall, but we need to see what your home feels like, right, at the end of the day. So if you want to know what your home's value is, let's talk about it. So here's the danger of trusting the online numbers, okay? So sometimes they actually hurt sellers, right? Because of what I said, they create something, you know, something where you're kind of anchored to the number that you see, right? So if, let's say, the home on one of these valuation sites, whichever one you use, it could be Zillow, it could be, you know, a ton of other options. Um, you know, they'll do an estimate, right? And you're gonna lock onto the number. And if it's higher than you're ex, what you're expected to sell for, you're locked in on it. You know, it's an emotional connection, and you're really trying to get that number, right? Because obviously, you're trying to get the most for your home, right? All the blood, sweat, and tears, all the sacrifices that you made for your home, you know, you want to make sure that you don't leave money on the table. So I understand where the mentality comes from, but we have to go from hope, because hope is not a strategy, to actually, you know, lock into the numbers and into the reality that your home sits in, right? And that's why I always say, when you're meeting with an agent about your home value or about selling your home, don't just go by what they are saying that the home might sell for. Have them show you the logic, the numbers, the comparable sales that, you know, help them get to that number that they're showing you, right? Because that's going to be critical for it, you know. The thing is that the market doesn't care about the fact that you love that number that was on the online, you know, valuation, right? When a home is priced based on an online estimate instead of the market, it ends up sitting, especially, like I said, when you're priced too high, right? That's where you end up dealing with price reductions, you end up dealing with more days on market, and you end up actually helping your neighbors sell. You know, your momentum is lost, you know. The the market doesn't punish you for being wrong. It actually punishes you for being slow to adjust. So if you made this mistake already, you know, talk to your agent about what your current value is, and then adjust accordingly, because that's going to be very critical in order for you to actually get your home sold. And remember to cut off the emotional tie to it. So if you've noticed that homes are you know, on the market longer, comment truth. Let me know that you are actually seeing what I'm seeing, right? So let's go to how I determine real value, right? So, and I can say this with several of the agents that I've worked with. So, just to give you a little context, I've been a real estate agent. I've been in the business for 15 plus years now, and I've been a real estate agent for 13 years now, which is crazy. Um, so I've seen how people value properties. I've seen um, how things are compared, right? And I can tell you from how I learned to do it, how I refined it. Um, you know, I look at really what we call hyper local sales, not just neighborhood averages, not just you know. Um, not just painting everything with a broad brush. You really have to lock in. So sometimes I take a little bit more time than I should when I'm looking at properties and trying to price right, because I almost do like three CMAs or comparative market analysis, to kind of really lock in and make sure that I'm really looking at the right homes. Because sometimes with the different tools that we have, some things were sold off market, so we have to make sure to kind of include them, but also look at each scenario, right? Because let's say a house sold that was exactly like yours, but it was an estate, where let's say it was someone's home for many years, and they've gone on to pass, and now no one's really taking care of the home, but the square footage and the footprint is very similar to yours. Well, I need to look at that, and then I need to look at, okay, this house sold for like half the value of yours. Let's just say for kind of illustration sense here. Um, why did that happen, right? And with the tools that we have, we'll see some stuff that says like distress sale, which means they're just trying to get whatever they can. The bank's selling it, or it's a short sale, or it's the estate situation that I'm talking about, or there's repairs that couldn't be done, or somebody had an emergency and they needed to get whatever they could get for it, and it was a cash purchase. So we really have to look at every scenario. We can't just go on averages, right? And then we're also studying the behavior of what buyers are reacting to, right? So we're looking at how they're looking at certain price points. We're looking at how they're, looking at the type of marketing that's being done for homes. And then we want to make sure to analyze the competition, right? Because what is the buyer? What are these buyers' agents going to be comparing your home against? And then we build a pricing strategy designed for momentum and not guesswork, right? Because we want to make sure that we launch your home properly in order to maximize the value of your home, right? Of course, we meet before that, set expectations. We talk about, what you can do to improve the value of your home, even if it's like just organizing or painting, or, certain renovations or upgrades, or a lot of times it's low cost and more of decluttering and just putting things away and making more space available for buyers to look at, to feel like they can picture themselves in the rooms, in the area, in within your home, right? So, and then we give you that pricing strategy, and I try to do it as a collaborative effort, because I'm talking about not just telling you what I think. I'm showing you where I came up with this, what the data was, and how I came up with it, what my logic behind it is, right? So we're doing this comparatively. So a lot of times it's not our job as agents and my job to tell you, what you want to hear. My job is to help you sell for the best possible outcome, right? So if you want best possible outcome, give me a little thumbs up there. But so we want to make sure that we prepare you from the beginning, right? And again, you know, I don't blame you for starting the entire process with an online estimate, because at least they'll give you kind of a leg to stand on. They'll give you some information to kind of think about and see if it number one, if it makes sense, right? To put your home on the market. But at the end of the day, I want you to keep in mind that I have seen wild swings in terms of how sometimes it's been undervalued. Like, there was one that I remember that stuck really in my head, and it was one of my past clients that they were looking at it, right? They were looking at the property's value, and they were thinking, they actually reached out to us and we talked about it, and they were like, oh, we think it's worth this. And then we told them, and after, we gave them a range, and then based on how we sold it, it ended up being, over $40,000 more than what the online estimate was, and I had a friend of mine, we were talking about this specific topic, and in the industry, somebody that I respect, and he told me that there was one where it was 100,000 over, where they sold for $100,000 more than what these estimates were saying. So again, they're great tools to give you a starting point, but it's not going to be your overall strategy. At least I suggest not to, right? Um, if you're planning a move, clarity beats curiosity every single time. So even if you're just planning ahead, I would be super happy to walk you, through what your home could realistically sell for in today's market, right? Because I can't tell you, if we meet today and you're going to sell in 2 years, I can't tell you where the market is. I don't have in the future, I don't have a crystal ball, right? But at this very moment, I can at least give you an idea, and that can set things in motion, right? Sometimes you could be like, wow, I didn't know I could get that much, or wow, maybe I should build a little more equity in the home before I decide to make that move. Maybe it doesn't make sense. Because at the end of the day, I'm also not afraid of telling you what you don't want to hear. I want to guide you with the best to achieve the best possible result, right? It's your best interest ahead of everything, especially when you're a client. So I like to have that transparency, that honesty from the very beginning. And the only way that that happens is by giving you as much information as I can in a digestible way, not just throwing numbers at you, not just throwing, acronyms and try to, show how much I know, but actually showing you the research, showing you, every step of the way that I've made so far. And then it's your home. You're the boss. You get to decide which way to go. What is the best price point? Will you go with my strategy, or do you want to try a number? Are you willing to make that risk? Are you willing to do that, or do you want to, follow a sound strategy that can maximize the sales price of your home? So again, it's a nice starting point, these home valuations, and they've gotten better over time. They used to be absolutely trash. But let them be the starting point and compare, kind of like how people, they'll go to the doctor, but they already kind of they did like a little WebMD kind of thing where they know a little bit more than others. There's plenty of information out there. I'm not blocking any information. You guys could get all of this. You guys could learn all of this. But what's important here is to have more of a collaborative thought process where you're prepared. I understand that the consumer is more prepared now than they ever have been in the past. They have more information at their fingertips. But what they're hungry for is experience, is guidance, is, not just disseminating information, but filtering it, because there's just so much coming from so many different areas. What did I hear the other day? I think it was Tony Robbins. He was talking about how people aren't hungry for information, they're hungry for wisdom. So I think that using these tools is a great starting point, but I think that teaming up with somebody that can guide you more, and even if it's just that meeting, even if it's not guaranteed, to turn into a listing, we love to sit down and arm you with the knowledge that you need. If you want a real number, if you want more information, just DM me the word home, and I'll make sure to reach out to you, and we can talk a little bit more about it. Because at the end of the day, everything's very personal in this. And obviously, this is a very private, confidential meeting that we would have, whether it's virtual or in person. So if you don't want to DM, you can DM me for sure. Or you could always call or text me at 917-982-8899. And check out, our website at sellyourqueenshome.com. You can see a lot more information about, the home valuation. You can request one there where it'll kind of be a twofold. You'll get a little bit of an estimate up front, and then I can crunch the numbers and give you something more real, give you a walkthrough of your home and really guide you on that. and it will be no obligation experience. At the end of the day, like I said, I just want to make sure that you guys are prepared to make the decision when you're ready to do it. And if you're not watching live right now, if you're watching the replay, the same offer applies. Just comment or message me, and I'd be more than happy to walk you through your actual home value, not just a guesstimate, let's call it, an online guesstimate. you know Again, websites like Zillow, they don't walk through your house. Why two similar homes sell for different prices? We need to go through that. There's that danger of anchoring to online values, which is locking in that idea that this online site said that my home is worth X amount, and that's the number I want no matter what. That's a danger, because it could lead to a lot of disappointment, long days on market, and you helping your neighbors sell, not actually selling your home. And then we also have to analyze what actually determines market value. We got to make sure to price for momentum versus just ego. So please feel free to reach out, guys. I really, really, truly appreciate you taking the time out to watch this. I hope that you got some good information, something that you can help someone else or yourself. Hopefully this was valuable to you. And I look forward to meeting more of you and helping more of you reach your goals. And please feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to speaking with you, DMing, texting, messenger pigeoning, smoke signals, whatever you need to reach me. I'm always here for you guys, and if I'm not around or I'm with a client, I'll always make sure to reach back out to you, and help you as best we can. Feel free to share this. Sharing is caring. So